Welcome to another episode of the Programmatic Digest podcast. This is a special episode. It is sponsored by Drako Media, and we have one of our favorite people on the podcast, Stewart Sullivan, CEO of Drako Media. How you doing, Stewart?
Good. It's good to be here.
I am. I said this with all the podcasts. We have a special podcast because all of my podcasts are pretty special, in my opinion. But this one is particular. It's particularly special to me because a couple years ago, I promised the listener and the whoever was engaging with my content on LinkedIn or on the podcast that I really wanted to bridge, like truly bridge what it was happening on the other side. Like, we represent the buyers. I was always a trader from ad agencies working with some in-house branding. And so we're really familiar with how things work on the buy side, like behind the DSP. And so you're here to help me do this. You're part of our mission to really demystify what's going on, but also how to bridge the two because we put a lot of trust in our DSP. And so in today's podcast, we're going to talk about data partners, how to choose the right partner. I have some really key questions here about Drako, but also about you from a career perspective, a career move. I think it's going to be really cool to hear from you and hear from your team. And for my listeners, my friends listening and watching on YouTube, thank you again for showing love. I appreciate you. Drako is here to help us be better at our job, to help us decide which data partner we should choose. So should it be Drako or others? It really depends. But take this as an opportunity to understand there's another perspective out there and be better than most of us with only keeping your strategy to what you know. Pick up your phone, call other partners, call your vendors, ask what's up, ask for that boutique style offering that they have. Okay, so without let's talk. Let's get into our podcast, Stewart. Thank you again for being here. Before we get into the non-sexy conversation of work stuff, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us about like your journey. How did you wake up one morning and tell your parents like, I'm going to be in programmatic when I grow up? That's for sure. And if that wasn't the case, then tell us like how you fell into it, and then what prompted you to create such a powerhouse like Drako Media Group.
Yeah, totally. I definitely fell into it. I studied marketing at in Concordia here in Montreal back in 2010 through 2012, I guess. Nothing about that degree or those studies were based on digital, so we didn't touch programmatic whatsoever back then. As we talked about on a couple calls ago, we have similar backgrounds. Starting as a trader back in the day, programmatic was just getting into the swing of things. I think Trade Desk started in 2008. I would have started managing campaigns on the Trade Desk in 2013, late 2013, back before audio, back before CTV, before out of home or digital out of home anyway. But when I landed the job, I didn't even know what programmatic was. So I learned everything from my previous company, from the Trade Desk as well. They were great mentors. Fast forward a few years, I got really lucky and I ran into this gentleman that helped start the company, start Drako. But after a few years of managing campaigns, then managing people, managing campaigns, I realized that, it really isn't rocket science, especially with great partners like the Trade Desk and with other DSPs kind of behind the scenes. I realized that this would be doable to start a company and to do it myself, do it with my other partner, Laura Al-Qaim, who helped start the company. And then in May of 2017, so I was working as a trader for about 3.5 years, then managing traders, and then we, took a risk and started Drako. So back then we were just a DSP reseller. We were a trading desk. We had no data, we had no tech. It was completely service based. We were bootstrapped, still are bootstrapped. And then over the years, we started working a lot with location data. So through platforms like Simplify, through platforms like InMarket, we touched a bit on, we worked a bit with Foursquare, worked a bit with Locala. We realized that we could actually start buying and processing raw data ourselves, kind of creating our own database, which we can talk a bit later. But we realized that owning the data and being able to manipulate it, being able to create our own audiences was a major USP. And coming from a media buying slash programmatic campaign management background, it was really easy for us to identify some pain points, which you kind of hit the nail on the head on from a media buyer's perspective. Just grabbing data off the shelf, kind of relying and trusting the DSP in those moments where, like we love the trade desk, we love our DSP partners, but ultimately there are things in a DSP where if you're not really sure of what you're doing, or not working directly with a data partner or a contextual partner or third-party partners, you are really relying on the DSP to do most of the work for you. So we went down the road of building a database. We met another partner, Gabriel Mongeau, in 2020. Ironically, right when COVID started, we started working on gathering data from where phones have been. And if you ever worked with location data, you know that it's really based. The big verticals would be retail, obviously political, tourism. But right when COVID started, we started gathering data from stores, which completely shut down at the time. So ironically, we started building out the database at that moment, early 2020, and then fast forward a few years, we went to market as a data company in 2023. So we've kind of transformed from being a trading desk, which was the original background of the company, to a location data company, the largest location data company in Canada, in fact, certainly not the largest in the US, with that existing trading desk inside the company. So our USP and what we bring to the table for our agency partners, for our advertiser partners, we are the only location data company in the market that isn't a DSP that actually runs campaigns while being platform or DSP agnostic. So we'll focus on the audience itself when it comes to campaign management. We'll pick the channel or the platform that it's most appropriate to run on, and that's how we approach campaign management. It's how we approach forecasting. But today we do position ourselves as a location data company with that existing and internal trading desk inside of the company as a department.
That's really cool and also I want to point out that it's okay to get started with something and pivot. I feel like pivoting is like such it's okay to pivot, especially in this industry. I mean, we see it in the news every other day. It's okay to pivot. So if you're thinking about pivoting in your career today, this is a great example of successfully pivoting into something that matters, but also we all grow. So interest changes, skill set changes with time, which leads us into the conversation today. I grew up in the industry like yourself as a trader, and I know that like I mentioned in my intro, we do put a lot of trust in the DSP. I also grew up starting with the trade desk, right? Which looks different back in the days than it is now. But
yeah, totally.
I remember specifically receiving trying to test a new data partner in the new segments in my campaigns, and my manager saying no, or check with the DSP team, check with the trade desk first and see what is recommended. And then if the trade desk wasn't too keen, or if it wasn't a underlining partnership on their side, they wouldn't push it as much, unless they would say sometimes they would say things like, you can give it a try, we haven't done it yet, we recommend this instead, or vice versa. And so there are a lot of situations and instances where a lot of our traders today are still experiencing I need to ask my DSP if this is a good move or not. And I feel that, and I know this is a lack of education to a certain extent. And so if you hear me, if anybody in the trade desk is listening to me, I'm not throwing any shades here. I'm just stating facts that you guys have been amazing, but there's also a limitation into expanding beyond what you guys can teach us. That's what I'm saying. You guys are great. Don't want to receive no letters or DMs. But with that said, Stewart, what happens or how do you address the whole, this is what data looks today, this is what you should pay attention to? What are maybe do you have a secret sauce to very much smelling and seeing that this is the right data partner from far away? Is there a magical potion? Is there a formula that we have to say that and know that this partner is perfect for us? How do you answer how to choose the right data partner?
I don't think that's a simple answer. Being a location
You mean there's no
company,
secret answer? No.
I don't think there's a magic bullet.
Yeah.
No, I think there are certain channels and verticals where certain data works better than others. Being a location data company, we try to use location data when possible, and when relevant, but there's certainly instances, the example I love to give is job title targeting, right? We have today about 75,000 syndicated segments that can be found on any DSP through LiveRamp, et cetera. Job title, we don't have any data there. And the reason being is, we're able as a company, unlike every location data company out there, we can identify in any given location employee, visitor, or resident. So you can give me an address list and I can say, okay, these IDs work there. What we can't do is distinguish VP versus account manager versus janitor. They come in at the same frequency generally. So there are often times when location data is a great fit. And then within that, you have multiple options there. You have AdSquare, you have Foursquare, you have Precisely, you have Drako. But there are times when location data isn't a fit. So I think first and foremost, it's understanding what your client, if you're an agency, what the advertiser is looking to do. If you're a data partner like Drako, what is the agency looking to do ultimately? And that kind of informs what data we should be looking at from a campaign management perspective. Then you can go a bit deeper and look at the differences between a location data company if you're focused on, let's say, competitive conquesting, which is a big use case for location data. How is that data being collected? Where is it coming from? Is the data company transparent about that? How often is it refreshed? These are companies, or these are questions that they should be asking. Agencies should be asking the DSP. Agencies should be asking the data company they're working with. I think from a media buyer's perspective, and I've been a media buyer. We have a full team of media buyers. It's a busy job, right? You're managing campaigns, you're optimizing, you're planning, you're getting back to the client. Ultimately, I don't think there's always that homework being done beforehand when adding a segment to a campaign or a type of segment or a category of segment for a specific vertical. Especially, and like you said, we're certainly not here to bash on the trade desk. We love the trade desk. We run most of our campaigns there. They're our largest data partner. But a platform like the trade desk makes it very easy for you to go into their DMP and search a group of segments by keyword. So let's say McDonald's visitor. You're going to get 200 segments, and the top ones are going to be McDonald's visitor segments from location data companies, and that keyword match gets broader and broader. Ultimately, that grouping of segments is probably not what you're looking for as a media buyer, but the platform makes it so easy for you to collect and group data that way that it becomes almost a default. So what we've noticed as a data company is the challenge is trying to educate an agency or an advertiser or even the DSP why, first and foremost, that grouping of segments really 9 times out of 10 doesn't make sense for what you're trying to do in a campaign. But ultimately, and the biggest factor there is the size of that collected grouped segment. There's no way it's going to be the right size for your campaign. It's almost impossible. It's a needle in a haystack kind of scenario. So a part of our job as a data company is to educate the importance and the understanding of why you should be selecting a different type of data, or a certain type of data rather. But then further to that, how should you be manipulating it or creating a segment from a custom perspective, and why is that important in a campaign?
Can you answer or maybe demystify this myth that custom means more expensive or custom means less scale? Hella
Totally,
expensive.
yeah.
Is this
I mean,
true or
I
not?
think, well, from a price point standpoint, no. I mean, for like you look at our Drako data off the shelf, and you can, this I'm sure is true for other data companies that do custom work, which not all of them do. Custom often will mean more work for the data vendor, not necessarily more work for the media buyer. And our challenge as well is to try to facilitate and streamline that process of, for example, the 200 McDonald's visitor segments that you're adding into a campaign. Why is that an inefficient way to be buying audiences or segments today? And how can we make it as easy as possible for that client to activate a custom segment that has a size and a cost that makes sense for the campaign they're trying to run, rather than taking the easy way out and saying, I'm grabbing everything that's available to me in a DMP or through a DSP, and then trying to optimize between 200 segments in a campaign where often you don't have the time or bandwidth to do that.
Yeah, and that makes me think of, it's almost like custom versus non-custom versus getting into your DSP DMPs to select those segments, it's almost making me think of like when you go obviously to buy a suit, like even as a man, as a woman, whoever you are, however you identify yourself, you're welcome here. But when you go buy a suit, like there's always the opportunity to have the perfect fit to your body shape. And as a woman who had kids, before kids, things like that, our bodies evolves. And the suit that I wore 5 years ago are not fitting the same, at least, as the suit I'm
Right.
wearing today, because I went to a specific tailor that knows my body. She knows my pocket. She's cool. And so I feel like we can always walk into, like my husband can always walk into Express, which is not sponsoring this podcast. Express can go and he'll find a select amount of suits and it'll fit him like a glove, right?
Mhm.
But he also has a tailor where it's like this tailor, whenever he wears those suits, I'm like, yo, who who are you? Are you married? Can I have your babies? Like he looks fantastic. He feels confident because he knows it's shaped to his body. So there's two options. Like you can go to Express and buy those suits, right? You
Yeah.
know it'll fit, but there's only so much. At this point, he has all the damn colors that Express can have, right? But when you go to say that tailor, it's really meant for him, and it can be customized to his like unique taste, which are very unique.
Mhm.
And so I feel like it's okay to have the tailor option. It's also okay to have express option. What Stewart is telling us is that you have both options. Make sure you maximize both options based on your campaign, excuse me, based on your strategy, based on whatever it is, right? And so before we talk into about the onboarding process, because that's another thing too about data is like, oh, well, is it scalable? Is it premium or whatever that is these days? Is it more expensive or whatnot? But also like how complicated it is. Do we need a third party? So before we get to this topic, help me answer this whole onboarding process. Like, first of all, when a data partner comes to us and say onboarding is very seamless, it only takes a couple clicks. But what does it really does it take a couple clicks for them? But I have to upload all these things. I have to do all of that. Like, can you tell us? Let's start with like Drako's onboarding process first. Like, how is that even helping to improve a campaign post setup? Because in my
Yeah.
opinion, it's always starting at the planning phase and then the onboarding, the setup, and then that's how things perform much efficiently and much effectively. So talk to us about that onboarding process and what it looks like if somebody were to try a custom Geo Drako segment.
Yeah. So, I mean, we onboard two different types of client. One, on the service side, where we're actually managing campaigns using that data, generally for small to medium-sized ad agencies or advertisers. And then on the data side of the company, where we're selling data directly to an agency or an advertiser or even DSPs directly, the onboarding process for us, in terms of onboarding the client, is a little bit different, but the methodology and the intention that we're doing it with is the same. Our focus, first and foremost, is to build a custom segment for each individual campaign that we're pitching and running. And I think today, one of the things that's challenging about growing a data company, where we're trying to challenge the status quo, where historically, if you come from a data company or from a DSP's perspective, historically, data companies have been rewarded for having the largest segments possible or the cheapest segments possible. So when we started the company, started to build segments and put them out there, and you know, you mentioned off the shelf before. I mentioned that we have 75,000 syndicated segments. We use the term off the shelf a lot, right? It's available to you right through the DMP, through
Yeah.
LiveRamp, through any DSP out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong per se with grabbing an off-the-shelf segment, especially
Mm-hmm.
if your focus is, I need a segment large enough to run this campaign.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's how it's been done since I've been running campaigns for about 13 years. The challenge that we're running into, that we're trying to change and educate our clients and prospects and kind of the industry in general, is that an off-the-shelf segment is rarely going to be the right size to achieve a reach and frequency that you want out of a campaign. It's either going to be too big or too small. So our onboarding process, first and foremost, starts with, what are you trying to accomplish with a campaign? And often, the agencies that we work with, their goal might be different than the advertisers. And when those goals line up, that's when we run the best possible campaign that we can for them. But often we'll see the agency's goal is, well, I just need to deliver the budget, right? In that
Oh
case,
yeah.
a syndicated segment might be the
Yeah.
right fit for that kind of agency. But if
Yeah.
the goal is I want to run the best campaign I possibly can for my client and I'm willing to take a little more time to do so, then we're building a segment that makes sense for the budget and the scope and the geo and the flight of a campaign. Um, we often liken audience buying today. We have a lot of analogies that we use internally that some are a little funnier than others. One that my CTO loves, and I'll shamelessly steal right now, is that audience buying today, you go into a DMP, it's like being on Storage Wars. It's like going up to a storage container where you're not sure what's inside of it and you're bidding on it in an effort to sell what's inside of it for more than you're paying for it. You want to make a profit. That's the goal there. But you have no
Yeah.
idea who put what into
What,
that storage.
yeah, what's inside?
Exactly. And that's how audience buying today has worked forever. So
Yeah.
when working directly with a data company, we're able to tell you, well, we use SDK data, we don't use Bitstream. We use polygons, we don't use radiuses to build our audiences. And when we're customizing a segment for a client, we're looking at a distinct look back window. So how long do you want to look back and reach data from? We're looking at the frequency at which those IDs are walking in and out of the location. We're looking
Yeah.
at what platform it's going to be pushed to. What's that match rate going to look like? What channel is it going to
Yeah.
be running on? Are
Yeah.
we connected to, for example, UID2 on the trade desk? That allows us
Mhm.
to power CP campaigns and other campaigns of that nature rather than just relying on cell phones. So we're taking a step back there, and instead of saying, "Hey, client XYZ, you're trying to reach," and I'll use the same example I always do, McDonald's visitor.
Yeah.
Well, even the Drako McDonald's visitor segment off the shelf, it's
Mhm.
probably going to be too big or too small for your campaign. So allow us to customize it at no extra cost. And
Yeah.
then for your point earlier, from a media buyer's perspective, you're still dragging and dropping a segment into a campaign. There's no change
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Instead of grabbing the third party, the DMP, you're grabbing it from a first party upload. It works the same.
Yeah. I mean, that's so powerful. And also, I want to take a small, let me just even break it down one step uh, back. Well, let's take a step back, right? To all my juniors, entry level friends, what we're talking about is data. But a lot of things that we talk about in the industry is data related. I feel like data is one of the cornerstone of programmatic. We need the data, and so understand that there are different type of data, and I would even borrow the term signals. The signals that we are able to measure and track forms or becomes this data point that Stewart and his team are working on. And so specific to that signal. And so example of signals outside of what Stewart has been mentioning is your IP address could be a signal. Your cell phone, which is SDK, which is what you guys also are able to track, which is another form of signals, excuse me. Your TV is a signal. Your computer is a signal. Any Wi-Fi point is a signal. I mean, you name it. And so if you want me to give you another illustration, and I'll tie it back in a second here, so follow through. But there's about, at least in American household, you have close to 20 items that are Wi-Fi based that could be signals. So there's a way for us to measure a consumer behavior based on those 20 to 23 items in the household. It could be your damn microwave, it could be your coffee machine, it could be I'm not gonna tell her name, but the Google Alexa. It could be anything, your TV, like I said, your phone. And there are companies that help us tie it and determine, it's called an ID graph, determine that this one consumer may have, most likely, we're pretty confident that it has at least 20 of those different signals, tying it back to this one behavior that is most like your mother because she talks about Pampers, most like your business owner because she watches Market Watch. I don't know, something like that. And so understanding the different signals, understanding the different data points that you have access to is your superpower as a trader, whether you're a planner, junior, exec, you're selling product marketing. You have to understand that there are multiple ways of tracking this data point. What the Drako team is offering is that not only are we a geolocation data provider based on that one mobile signal, but they're able to layer other signals that they're measuring, and correct me if I'm wrong here, right? I'm just painting the picture. They're able to measure beyond that point. And so he did say earlier, if you're looking for specific job title, maybe it's not the route. But if you're looking for, if you are looking maybe, and that's just an example, auto dealership, maybe that's the route, right? If you're looking in retail, targeting competitors, maybe that's the route. All right, so those are different data signals. Can you talk to us? You know what? Show us like maybe a case study. Let's speak maybe.
Well, actually, you mentioned auto
Oh
and the
yeah,
types of signal. That's a great analogy that I love to use. So
talk to us.
yeah, so I'm not a car guy, right? I own a car because I have to get to work and back, and I need to drive places. But I'm not big into cars, although I do have a dream car, right? I think everyone in the world has some sort of dream. Perhaps it's a car, perhaps it's a house. For me, I have a dream car. It's an Audi R8. And actually, just for fun, right before this call, I went on to Audi to get the 2025 price because I wanted to give the analogy. So it's I think a $300,000 car. But we're talking about signals. So I go on Audi.com. I'm only there to find out how much it costs. But you have data companies, pixels on that website that are now collecting my visit and basically distinguishing me as someone who probably has a household income of over $1 million, uh, a net worth of maybe 1 million to 5 million if I'm looking at a
Mm-hmm.
$300,000 car, and most importantly, in market for an Audi. All those signals are wrong, right? So when you're talking about job titles, so
Yeah,
that's a type of signal we don't even receive. So we're not even
yeah,
in the market to service those types of client. But
yeah.
for auto, if I had the choice as a media buyer, I don't want website visit data because
Mm-hmm.
I just gave you an example of how it can be
Yeah,
completely wrong. I do want to find the person who was at the Audi dealership in the last 30 days. It is
yeah.
it's a much better indicator of intent. In our
They've been
opinion, that's
in,
why
yeah,
the
yeah. They
location data
were
route
on.
is exactly. They were either there to buy an Audi or they were with someone to buy an Audi or lease an Audi, right? So for us, there are some verticals where location data is such a perfect fit, and there's others where it's not. And you can't, there's never going to be a one size fits all to any type of data or type of signal. But as a media buyer, you're running campaigns on behalf of your agency who are running campaigns on behalf of their advertiser client. It's your responsibility to know which signals are appropriate and relevant and which are not for a given industry, given vertical, given campaign.
I love that. And you know what's funny? You know, a side note, I was on homes.com yesterday looking at $2 million homes in my area.
Same type of signal.
Five bedroom, big yard out here in North Carolina streets. But yeah, because yeah, anyway, so yes, merging both is really important, and I think as a trader you have to do the diligence of being this way. And if you are feeling inspired by this conversation, obviously I'll have all of Draco's information in the show notes or in this video on YouTube. We even have you can even download some of the case studies that he's referring to in this QR code that I'll place somewhere here. So there's ways for you to get in contact with Stewart and his team. But ideally, if you experience friction internally where you bring up a new idea, a new strategy, this is the part that we should be testing right now for this campaign. It's okay. Again, a lot of us that grew up in the industry are so used to having all of our trust into this one tool or technology or team. And so it won't be always received the same way because now you're asking to do things differently. But that's how you grow and that's how you expand. And sometimes it goes beyond that spending for that CPM. Now, if that's what you do, cool. Power to you. This is not it. But if you're taking it to the next level and you're really becoming that true marketer at the end of the day, because we're all marketers at the end of the day, back to that consumer, you have to give it a try. You have to give it a try with your data partners. You have to give it a try with Drako. You have to give it a try with somebody that can take it to the next level. Now you're probably thinking, Ellen, I have 12 campaigns. I can now be tracking 12 custom campaigns. That's not, again, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that there are a handful, half of those campaigns, maybe 6 or 7 of them, should probably be considering something that's a little bit beyond those DMPs or internal DMPs segments. Here's another way to consider. Your campaign has been running for a while, and you realize, like, a lot of those lifestyle websites, or a lot of those real estate website comes up. I'm getting a lot of conversion from, competitors, or like the DIYs, auto shop online. And so you're looking at your site list, right? And then you realize there's a specific trends. And then you realize, like, and then you hear that Drako is able to not only provide geolocation, but they layer targeting, they can layer other data signals. And so this is the opportunity to provide a new recommendation. And this is how you should frame it. I am seeing that based on our 2-month data analysis, that we're seeing clear trends with our conversion, right? People are visiting websites that are talking about real estate, talking about moving, talking about buying new cars. We know that Drako Media is already available in most of the DSPs out here in the streets. They offer not only off-the-shelf segments targeted these people from a data signal perspective, not just from a contextual now, because you're moving from sites into behavior. So based on this contextual trends, let's test a behavioral signal that can take it to the next level outside of when they're contextually consuming something that is related to our KPI, related to our brand. That is how you build up, excuse my French, that's how you build up your strategy. That's how you increase a budget, because you're going to need more money to invest in this, or at least test it and then ask for more. And so you can only do this really, really well with a particular partner. And let me take it one step further. Keep that partner in your toolbox, because that's how you continue building your SPO in-house, like your supply partners, your data partners that you can call. Again, don't call Drako for this, but I've called Drako for that. They've performed beyond for this, but maybe not for that. Now I know, use them for this and continue maximize it and talk to each other. So another thing that, I don't know if y'all heard Stewart's magic, but he mentioned, like, you can still customize it, right? He's like your tour guide. It's not just your brochure, you're going around the city trying to find this museum or not. He's actually walking you through updating. This street is closed. Let me take you here. Like, you just need this type of service once in a while. You don't have to do everything on your own. Okay. So take this with an opportunity to do your job more efficiently and more effectively, so that you're pulled away from doing those mundane tasks and really focusing on the strategy and the growth of your client. Because our job is to retain this business. You nurture it, you perform hella well, and then you ask for a budget, and then you increase it, and then it becomes a legacy client, and then boom. Okay, so salespeople have it hard out here, bringing new business, keeping the business, but it's up to us in-house to make sure that this business stays in, and this is how we do it. This is how we do it, because most of us don't right now. Okay, so let's start here.
And one thing, and obviously we're here to promote Drako, but one thing that we're trying to implore our clients and prospects to do is when you're looking at customization, right? So like we said, off-the-shelf data, it does have its use cases. There's a reason that data has been bought and sold that way for a long time. But we're trying to educate the market in that, like, if you're using off-the-shelf data as an agency or a trading desk, your competitors are using the exact same data. You have no competitive advantage.
Same data. That is such a good point. Sorry, I just got excited, but that's a fact.
Yeah, everyone, because at the end of the day, DSP access today has been commoditized. Data segment access has been commoditized. So you have DSPs like Trade Desk that have high minimums. You have DSPs that have the same data partners, the same data segments available with no minimums. At the end of the day, you're all targeting the same kinds of people with the same inflated segments. There's no competitive advantage there, right? So, and this is not only a Drako plug here, but it's the ability to work with a data partner that allows you to take it one step further. That is a big competitive advantage in the market.
Yeah, I mean that's such a good point too. And I always figured, and also whenever I train, and they always ask me like, "Oh, the trade desk," or I mean, any desk we recommend to start the minimum bid as this, the maximum bid. I always tell everybody that listen now, they're probably telling all of their clients this. You
Exactly.
have to
Yeah.
be competitive. Add 10 to 15% on that bid. Ooh, that's a lot. Yes, that's a lot. You have to be competitive. Okay. And it's
Mhm.
up to the machine to make sure you are efficient in how you're spending this, right? Or if you have a chalice, or if you have another AI tool, that's up to them to help you, even out at the end of the day. But
Mhm.
you can no longer, you just can't be average no more, y'all. This is how we're going to end this podcast. We can't keep being average. Too much going on in the industry. We have to do our due diligence. And maybe you're feeling like, damn, I have another thing to worry about. But maybe you have to get through that extra step now so that everything can become more efficient and you have more time back on your hands. Because once this segment is performing, I'm not saying put it together. That's not what I'm saying. But there should be a clear way to optimize that will not require you as much, little click clack there and here and there, because now not only you have your team, you have to optimize it, but the team, the data partner team should and will continue to optimize. Now, let me end with this before my final question to you, Stuart, is that again, for my friends that are listening, whenever you have a custom segments, be sure to set it up the right way based on the partner's recommendation. So I know we're married to our brand safety tools in-house. We're married to our universal site list targeting and whatnot. But very often, the best way to be cost efficient is to allow your data partner to put these targeting and filters on their end. They save us some points, right, in your platform, and then you're able to really track and measure clearly. So I'll leave you with this. So if you're testing a Drako segment that's customized and is not spending, let's say, maybe turn off your filters. Maybe turn off that brand safety via, I don't know, IS, double verify, you name it. Maybe ask the Drako team to, okay, well, I'm going to turn this off. What else do you have on the back end to prevent this? And they'll tell you, we have this. Like we're literally bidding. You're doing this twice. Let us do it for
Mhm.
you. It helps you save some cost. Another thing too is that you can still layer some targeting, like I think Geo, but like if the data partner offers that, all you should be able to do is place that segment to that one ad group, please. That's it. It has to be its own ad group, its own budget, and then run it that way. I do think you'll be able to maximize it that way. Would you agree too?
Yeah, I do think, well, to a certain extent, I do think brand safety filters are always important, and our recommendations wouldn't necessarily be, hey, you want to scale the spend, that would be the first step. We actually have some in-house proprietary tools which are not lookalike models, to take a seed audience and scale it by associating your seed ID, so that McDonald's visitor example, with their household devices, workplace devices, or actually social circle devices, which is patented technology. So there are ways around refining and scaling an audience, which is a big part of our data as a service team. It's what they do all day, every day. And that's also why, that off the shelf versus tailored, the example you gave before. At the end of the day, there are tools available to tailor these segments. One cool thing that we do is, and again, shameless plug, but we're able to dive into a segment. So right now, you buy a third-party segment off the shelf, it's binary. Someone's either in that audience or they're not. You cannot slice up that audience in any way, shape, or form, or that segment rather. What we're able to do is take that McDonald's visitor segment, take the budget you're looking to run, and then assign its quality score to every single ID we see in that segment, and then only take the overly indexed IDs that we see that we need. We might not need 50% of that audience. We might need 13% based on the budget and the scope of the campaign. So that's what a partner like Drako, and there are other partners that customize segments out there. That's what we're able to do. So we're not just saying, oh, you're looking to target McDonald's visitors, go take the Drako segment off the shelf. You don't need Drako for that. You already have access to it. We're able to customize it using this proprietary software, or technology rather.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. No, I think this was super this was super great. I think it's a conversation that needed to be had again and over and again. And I really, if you have any questions about this podcast you're listening, next week we'll be welcoming another fantastic programmatic ninja from the Drako team, and she will be talking about media planning with a data first mindset. So think of it as what we mentioned, that your post campaign launch is only as successful as how you set it up before and how you plan for it. So we're taking up even like how to get started with her. And then our third and final installment of the series would include, now that you set it up, you ran the campaign and such, how do we measure our success, but also beyond measuring just one success, how do we go beyond? And so that one is going to be a live event, and I'll put all the information into the show notes again. So Stewart, before we thank you for so much wisdom here, how about you leave us with a word of wisdom? What is maybe something that you wish you knew then when you just started, like in the 2010s, that you knew now? What would you tell your freshman self starting in the industry with all of that wisdom that you acquired?
Oh wow, that's a tough question. I don't think I've been asked that question. I back then, and you have a very similar background.
Mhm.
Trading was very manual, right? Especially to look at the trade desk, you're pulling those HD reports,
Yeah,
going through a
good
campaign,
times.
optimizing.
Good times.
Now today, a lot of that campaign optimization is done for you, right? So
Hmm.
it is true. You set up a budget, a KPI, a target. It will do its best to optimize towards your KPI, but there's still manual changes today. And again, so it doesn't really apply to my career 13 years ago, but there are tools out there that go beyond just what the DSP is able to do themselves, which I think, and again, is part of our challenge as a company, a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
people are unaware of. So, going back
yeah.
13 years ago, I wish I had the automation that exists
Oh,
today.
hell yeah.
But if I knew there was a service out there that, okay, instead of grabbing, and there was a lot less data companies back then, instead of grabbing the Bomboras or the
Good times.
Exalates or the Low-to-Me segments,
Yeah,
there are other options that might be more
yeah.
boutique, less known. For sure, we're less known than an AdSquare or Foursquare, but ultimately, the ability to just go question what they're actually doing. How are you building the segments? Where's the data coming from? These data companies should be transparent with that info. As
Nice.
you know, it's their responsibility because at the end of the day, they have millions
Yeah,
and millions of campaigns being run with this data.
that's dope.
So that's something I wish I knew back then is you should not be afraid to challenge the status quo a little bit,
Yeah,
even if you're not able to make the changes yourself. But those tools should exist in the market.
that's so dope. Yeah, I mean, this is great. Thank you so much for sharing. And if you are if you are still unclear on how to select those off the shelf segments that we've mentioned, I actually have a 15-minute video where I'm walking you through a DSP DMPs internally, where I'm walking through an example, I believe. I was super pregnant when I recorded that video. Laughing at myself, y'all. It was fabulous. Okay, excuse you. But I will add the link in the show notes as well. And actually, when I was reviewing this a couple weeks ago before I posted on LinkedIn, I noticed that it was Draco segments I was selecting. I didn't do it on purpose. I recorded
But
this
we
at
have
two,
we
three
have a
years
lot
ago.
of
Yeah.
them.
So again, I'll drop that in the segments as well. I mean, in the show notes and the YouTube videos. As always, Stuart, thank you so much. We'll be hearing from the
Thank
team in
you.
the next couple, 2 to 3 podcasts. We appreciate what you're doing. I think this is so important. And don't hesitate to reach out to the Draco team if you hear this.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.